The cocaine mummies of ancient Egypt were a paradigm-shifting discovery, the implications of which redefine our view of the abilities of the ancient Egyptians and suggest clearly that the ancient Egyptians and ancient Americans traded together. They also knew how to party. Welcome to Shaman Vision. The cocaine mummies are ancient Egyptian mummies that have traces of cocaine, hash, and nicotine in their hair, skin, and bones. These substances are derived from plants that are native to the Americas, such as coca and tobacco, and were not thought to have been present in Africa until after Columbus voyaged to the New World in 1492. So, how did these drugs end up in the bodies of ancient Egyptians who lived thousands of years before? This is the question that has puzzled and fascinated researchers ever since 1992, when a German toxologist named Dr. Svetlana Balabanova tested the mummies at the Munich Museum for traces of opium as part of a study on ancient religious rites. To her surprise and disbelief, she found not only opium, but also cocaine and nicotine in several mummies, including a priestess named Hanat Tawi, who lived around 1000 BC. Balabanova's findings were met with skepticism and criticism by many scholars, who argued that her results were either false positives, contamination, or fraud. However, Balabanova defended her methods and results and challenged other researchers to replicate her test. She also pointed out that the levels of cocaine and nicotine in the mummies were consistent with regular use, not occasional exposure. The University of California Riverside's website has an article mentioning this discovery. In this article they say, quote, Balabanova and others are shown to have used and confirmed their findings with accepted methods. The possibility of the compounds being byproducts of decomposition is shown to be without precedent and highly unlikely. The possibility that the researchers made evaluations from fake mummies of recent drug users is shown to be highly unlikely in almost all cases. Several additional cases of unidentified American drugs and mummies are discussed. Additionally, it is shown that significant evidence exists for the contact with the Americas in pre-Columbian times. It is determined that the original findings are supported by substantial evidence despite the initial criticisms, end quote. The article goes on to say, as a reply to the criticisms, quote, in the study, samples were taken from 9 mummies that were dated from between 1070 BC and 395 AD. The samples including hair, skin, and muscle were taken from the head and abdomen. Bone tissue was also taken from the skull, end quote. They then go on to detail the scientific process they used to confirm their findings. Quote, this is the procedure used to produce what McPhillips considered indisputable evidence for confirming products of substance abuse in hair. Within recent years, hair analysis has been used more commonly in this kind of screening process, and the techniques employed have been optimized. Mistakes are known to have occurred in some cases, evaluating for metals, but the ability to detect drugs such as cocaine, nicotine, and hashish seem to not have been problematic, end quote. They continue, quote, the procedure includes a thorough washing of the hair to remove external contaminants, followed by a process of physical degradation using a variety of methods, such as digestion with enzymes or dissolutions with acids, organic solvents, etc. Following these preparatory procedures, the hair is then analyzed. Antibody testing is a well-established procedure, although there is a small potential for obtaining false positive results. These are mainly caused by the cross-reactivity of the antibody with other compounds, including minor painkillers, cold remedies, and antipsychotic drugs. Compounds not likely to be found in Egyptian mummies, end quote. Furthermore, quote, the suggestion of nicotine contamination from cigarette smoke is eliminated by the use of solvents and/or acids in the cleaning, end quote. They go on to say, quote, the validity of Balabanova's findings seem to be vindicated at least so far as the analytical method she used in the study. The author's methods, as well as those and additional findings reported here, have used a combination of immunological and chromatographic methods to both analyze and confirm samples, end quote. As you can see, the science adds up. When researching her methods, it is clear that she went through the proper process to thoroughly clean the samples to avoid contamination. Moreover, she argued that there was no reason to assume that the ancient Egyptians could not have had contact with the Americans, or at least with intermediaries who traded with them. This scientific evidence for the connection between ancient Egypt and ancient America substantiates other parallels in the societies like pyramid building, mythical and religious motifs, mummification, hieroglyphic languages, art and design styles, etc. The idea of pre-Columbian world travelers does have some precedence with archaeological findings, a couple of which include the megalithic Olmec heads found in South America that have undeniable African features, and the Perry-Reese map. The latter is a map compiled in the 1500s. The remarkable thing about this map is that it not only has the coast of Central and South America accurately mapped out, but it also has the northern coast of Antarctica mapped out, ice-free. The last time Antarctica was ice-free was around 1300 to 9000 BC. This dating fits in perfectly with the end of the Ice Age I mentioned in my previous video about the Great Sphinx. This was a time of extreme climate change that literally changed the world in a dramatic way. The Perry-Reese map was admittedly compiled from a lot of older source maps, most lost to history. But since it is obvious that the compiler had a reference map for the coast of ancient Antarctica ice-free, and Antarctica wasn't discovered by Westerners until 1820, this implies, and I will dare say proves, that ancient man mapped and navigated the globe far before Columbus. Through my journey researching the topic of the cocaine mummies, I have found no scientific article opposing this view, at least not any released to the public. If her claim is so absurd and her methods were not sound, it would be easy to replicate her test and prove her wrong, yet that has not been done. Most of the articles I've read concerning this topic are not written by scientists, and they do not reference verifiable scientific data. They hang their hat on the outdated and flawed view that it was impossible for the ancient Egyptians and ancient Americans to have had contact. This notion is based on another fraudulent dogma in history. The ancient man was dumb, and we have been on a linear incline of evolution and intelligence that landed us where we're at now. This is simply not true and a Eurocentric teaching that has been presented as fact, even though a multitude of actual evidence contradicts it. In addition to the evidence I've stated earlier in this video, we have the example of the Great Pyramid of Egypt, the extremely ancient Sphinx, and Göbekli Tepe, just to name a few. The evidence and data adds up in my eyes that it is entirely possible and likely that at some point there was a connection between the ancient Egyptian culture and ancient American culture. The mystery only deepens, and I intend to explore more. Do your own research and come to your own conclusions. Thanks for watching. Peace.